Welcome to GeekDIYMechanic Mechanic. The purpose of this video is to discuss the driving cycle used for a 2004 Hyundai Sonata Catalyst Readiness Monitor to execute. From the home page, let us navigate to Case Studies, Sonata Catalyst Monitor. My friend called me in deep concern because he needed to smog his car within a week and a half. But when he took it in previously for smog, it failed because the Catalyst Readiness Monitor did not execute, did not complete. And he just, after driving 200 miles, he still could not get it to execute the test. So he called me and asked if I had any tricks or anything. Before we move forward, in case you don't remember readiness monitors, there's a web page on this website that will discuss them. Let's quickly go there and refresh your memory on a couple things. There are a series of readiness monitors. They vary by car make and manufacturer. These are popular ones that I've noticed that most cars seem to have. Maybe they are the minimum requirement, but I can't quote that because I've still seen some of these not be supported. So anyway, what I wanted to discuss is that some of the monitors are continuously executed, meaning, let's say, once the sensors are available, like the O2 is warmed up and the catalyst converter is warmed up, it executes, like the fuel system. Once it gets the O2 warmed up, the computer will make changes to the short-term fuel trim and make sure the oxygen sensor senses those changes. Others, like the catalyst, needs of many things to be up and running before it can execute successfully. O2's catalyst, EGR not running. It needs to verify the EGR system is functioning so that it can make sure it's not running. The evap, it has to make sure that it has run, so it can control it to make sure it's not going to affect this result. So it tends to be one of the last readiness monitors executed. Again, that's just from my experience. I've had to help numerous people get this specific monitor to begin and execute. So I'm speculating. I don't really know the code of the PCM, but based on my experience, that appears to be the case. From my research, it appears to be the case. So let's get back to the case study. Again, he disconnected his battery, so all the readiness monitor results were cleared, and that's why the catalyst monitor was outstanding. He drove about 200 miles, tried to follow what the smog technician provided him, but some small details he didn't follow. For example, he didn't make sure the car was completely cold. He didn't stay within a specific range, mile per hour range, long enough. So when when he asked me to help him, I plugged my scan tool in, and I did confirm that the catalyst monitor did not complete. I believe there can be 3 states a readiness monitor can be in. Our favorite one is test complete. There's not complete, and I believe there's a failed, and that's the one we don't want. And there's also a not supported, meaning this vehicle doesn't have it. So before even starting to help him, I just did some cursory checks on the scan tool. I ensured there were no current existing trouble codes, because that may prevent it from executing that test, and actually documentation confirmed that. The ECT and IAT were within 10 degrees Fahrenheit of each other. The short-term and long-term fuel trims were healthy. They were below 10% each. And I tried it at idle, 1500 and 2500 RPM. The battery voltage was good, 12.5. It was above it. The car did enter closed loop. The fuel system entered closed loop in a timely manner. I ensured the the O2 sensors before the catalytic converter were oscillating. They were reaching 200 millivolts and going down to around 800 millivolts. So they were oscillating nicely. I also made sure the O2 sensors after the catalytic converter were stable and that they didn't mirror the front O2 sensors too much. If that does happen, let's say the post oxygen sensor really mirrors the front, that usually means your catalytic converter is failing. It's not good any longer. And then I just went up and down the PID list and made sure things looked okay. Made sure sensors, like the temperature sensors, were not changing rapidly. They should change slow in a stair-step fashion, either up or down. So that's what I looked at. Because if you look above in the table, you see the O2 sensor test and the O2 heater sensor test, readiness test, passed. I didn't spend much time verifying the O2. I didn't use propane. I didn't get it into a lean condition. I didn't do that because I'm assuming the O2 sensor, or the two O2 readiness tests executed successfully, so I didn't go into them. So I researched and combined what the smog technician gave him and the snap-on troubleshooter on my scan tool proposed as a driving cycle for this year, make, model. There were some preconditions. A lot of them I did above. No DTCs. Voltage was good. Battery voltage. ECT was cold. We did make sure the fuel level was more than 15%. And the coolant temperature, which we started cold, was way below 122. And the coolant sensors and the coolant sensor ECT and the IAT were 11 degrees of each other when the car was just sitting there, not running, just sitting there. So key on, engine off. And over the overall drive cycle, make sure the engine load is 20 to 70%. In other words, don't drive the car hard. Don't accelerate quickly. Drive a steep hill. Things like that. I won't go through this completely. I'll sort of summarize it since you can read it yourself. But what was important, the biggest thing that is that I used the scan tool PIDs to ensure that we were following and within this. Why? Because the readiness monitor is using those PIDs. So I made sure the engine load and especially the mile per hour was in range. And in this particular case, that was the saving factor. It was because he did not have exact factory specifications. The tire, in other words, didn't meet the factory specifications. So his speedo was off. So if he would have only used the speedo, he was actually driving too slow, and the readiness monitor might not have met its preconditions to execute. So I used the vehicle speed PID to ensure we were in there, and then I used my phone as a timer to make sure we were within these ranges. Another important thing is turning on the AC and the rear window defroster as per it said. Make sure those are on and make sure they're off when the specification says it. Another major thing is when it says to decelerate, it usually will say without using the brake. It wants a slow deceleration. Why? Puts you in a lean condition, right? If you remember some of our other videos, when you let off the gas, it turns off the injector pulses for so long, so it's going to put it in a lean condition. That way the readiness monitor can make sure the catalytic converter is working as it should. That is sort of the highlights I wanted to say. Oh, and lastly, when you accelerate, it's not, foot to the floor. It's a mild acceleration. Remember, you want to be within 20 to 70% of engine load. If you remember up here, this right here. What went well is that we planned out the driving cycle at night. We didn't want traffic because if you notice, you need to drive sometimes for 5 minutes at a constant speed. So you don't want cars around, you don't have to change gears, and when we pull off to the side of the road, we want to make sure that a car's not right on your tail as we decelerate. So we did it at night. We leverage reliable sources. In the past, when I used the internet or some forum, those usually aren't very reliable sources for the drive cycle. So I went to manuals, what the smog technician gave him, which he would get from manuals, and what a good high-end scan tool would provide you, a reputable scan tool. Again, the biggest thing in this case is we leveraged the vehicle speed PID since his tires were a little off, and I suggest you do that with all your PIDs because that is what the PCM is using when it's executing or wanting to execute or ensuring that the preconditions are set. It's using the PCM PIDs, not what your dashboard is saying. And what we learned from this, what could have gone better, he learned that you have to do exactly what the drivability recommendation or chart, however you want to call it, indicates. Thank you for watching. I hope you found the information helpful.